There are so many ways to play the Chaos Dwarfs, and it makes making formations for them pretty damn hard because there's just so much preference and playstyle to be had here. That's also one thing that makes them so freaking interesting. Despite the fact there's not a lot of difference between the different legendary lords, the way that you spec them out and if you lean into their specialties, you can have an incredibly different campaign from playthrough to playthrough. So today, once again, welcome to Plot Armor, we will be going through each of the legendary lords and not just the best formation and best setup for them, but we'll be choosing one at each point of the game to show which way you can spread your investment and just tune your military to the challenges of that time. Alright, now before we even get to the late game formations, I'd be doing a huge disservice if I didn't show you an early game formation, so at least you can get that far. You're going to have to do a lot with not a lot due to the unit caps. You can always spend your first armaments on getting a third unit of Chaos Dwarfs, and you should always do that. These 3 units will comprise your front line. Also try to get a barracks early on so you can get the blunderbuss unit. This is their signature early game weapon. God damn, it does some good damage. You want these sitting behind these guys, right? So 3 lines here, and here our gunfire can start to spray the enemy. Now the next 2 ranks behind here, we are going to use all of our goblin archers, so stretch them all out like this, and then grab the middle and pull them back. You can hold Alt to move them back, and now we have 2 hollow diamonds. If you've seen any of my formation videos, you know that this is a really great trope. It's really nice and easy to understand, and it works really well. If you want, you can hotkey these, just say number 4 and number 5, and it just keeps in the front of your mind that these are 2 separate formations, but if a unit collides with one of these guys, the others can still support without getting tied into and roped into combat. But that's why we have a front row here. The enemy will run into these guys, and they will provide a nice target for these guys to volley into. Gunpowder directly, and then volleying arrows over the top. Now these arrows are flaming, so we can also do more damage thanks to fire magic. So we will have a fire sorcerer. The passive will lower their fire resistance, making the Law of Fire a really great Law of Magic to use. Hashut can also help you in this way. Now you also want another hero. Let's get a Castellan because it will increase the movement for your army, and we'll also use the Spool Centaur Torok, one of my favorite heroes in the entire game. Another great unit, and these can individually pin up a whole unit, providing excellent targets for your ranged units to hit. So this is our main core formation. Now the rest of it, we're going to have to use cheap basic units. If you don't have access to a barracks, you're going to have to use the most bare bones of the bare bones. I'll show you on this flank here. So you'll have a defensive infantry unit and then an offensive infantry unit. See my 8 unit types video, it'll be in the description. If you're new to the game, please check it out. I think it's one of the best things I've ever made. Here we have our defensive infantrymen. These are our basic goblins. They will tie the enemy up. They've got good melee defense to hold the line, and behind them we will have these orc laborers. This is only if you can't get hobgoblins, but these guys will pin the enemy around. These guys will run around and they will charge. Any other situation, give yourself access to hobgoblins, because get a cutthroat. These guys are actually trained, they know what they're doing, and behind them put these sneaky gits, and this is a more stealthy unit. It's going to do better on the charge, as well as it has a missile attack. But these guys also have Shroud, so they can move around without being seen from a distance. So whilst we will use them as an offensive infantry unit here, we can also use them up the field. So I've got a second unit here just for demonstration's sake. We can throw them here, and when the enemy leave their artillery unguarded, these guys can dive in here. So that's why we can use them. You can use a couple of units of these, and they're also very useful in sieges to take enemy units. Also, we do have some cavalry. Put them up here, and we'll turn skirmish mode on for them, so they will run away once they're in range of the enemy. We're going to get these sneaky gits to attack here, and eventually they might catch the enemy. Alright, so it looks like they're going to try to shoot these wolf archers. That's fine, but we force the engagement. Often all you need to do is to force the engagement and force the enemy to come to you. Let's fly ahead with our sorcerer. The enemy's approaching us on a bit of an angle, so let's highlight our formation, holding Alt to move it. We're going to hold control just to tilt it a little bit to make sure that we can face them front on. Aha, so it looks like their cavalry are coming here to charge us. Not a problem. What we'll do is we do not want them to charge and disrupt our formation here, so let's stretch these guys out here into a line to face the enemy and absorb the charge, and we'll do it the same here with our sneaky gits. I'd say they're in range of our archers there, so I actually will attack, but just make sure they don't run too far forward. Let's cast Burning Head. It's absolutely devastating. Getting good with the spell will really help you punch up in many of your battles. So when in doubt, you can hold Alt to get your heroes to pin the enemy in place. Now he's holding that whole unit in place. Look at them getting absolutely roasted by the arrows. If it looks like they're going to outflank you, don't be afraid to draw along the line around the rear of the enemy and even get your other units. Hold Alt Control, turn them around, and get them to face the enemy. Alright, he's being held in place. Let's shoot him down. Here we can move in with the goblins, and the orcs, we want them moving around to get a really decisive charge in the rear or in the back. Okay, I can see here we've got a nice flank to shoot into. Let's shoot into there. Just remember that you can break an enemy quicker by focus firing on it, so highlighting your units here, and let's focus on one at a time and just absolutely devastate their leadership. Remember, holding Alt will allow you to dive down, and with flying units, it's a great way to get a nice damage to their morale by hitting them in the rear. Now the remaining formations are going to focus less on how to play and more of the units that you use and how to set them up. Before we jump into this, I would like to make a formation around the legendary hero Gordaz Backstabber, because he allows you to make a unique army comprised with Hobgoblins, a unit you normally want to move away from as soon as possible. Just a quick reminder guys, if you are enjoying the video, please consider liking and subscribing, it really helps out. Ask any question in the comments, I answer everything. And if you'd like to talk strategy, feel free to join the Discord. Cheers. As you can see, Gordaz is quite useful primarily because of this replenishment ability, but you can buff his melee defense up to 77, meaning he's going to be able to tangle with just about anyone, and his speed is absolutely awesome, even better when you get him onto this giant wolf. But his real appeal is not just the ability to make him quite durable, but he has the ability to drop some more goblins into the battlefield, holding the line further for these basic archers to do their work. Add on top of this that this unique skill tree here is awesome. It decreases the cost of the goblins by 20%, and this means those dwarfs that you would normally need to hold the line can go into another army, which will be doing the more heavy battles. So this is more of a side army, more of a special op army trying to find those weaker settlements, but you've just seen here it can truly bat well above what it should. It does this quite handsomely by increasing the stats, and make sure you put them with a lord that maxes out the fervent fodder to give even more melee defense. Everything else can be dwarf and artillery oriented. Having one hobgoblin army I think is quite fun. So 2 hollow diamonds, we're going to name them 5 and 6, and we're going to put our remaining 2 archers straight line up the front there and a straight line down at the back here, just to mix things up a bit. To hold the front line, we of course need these hobgoblin cutthroats. 48 melee defense, pretty damn happy with that, and that is all thanks to Gordaz Backstabber. And we're going to have, as usual, 3 front line holders. Down the back, we're going to have our sneaky gits, and they're going to be in a wide formation back here to help countercharge around the flanks. Because further up, we have our goblin wolf riders to run up there, and we have a Regiments of Renown version. I'm going to start it up here just to do a bit of trolling. Just because I like to sometimes throw something in skirmish mode on there, it just pisses them off and will make them come our way. Definitely full of some high tier units that this army, without having Gordaz, would not stand a chance against. We also are later in the campaign, so we have these lovely ordnance abilities allowing us to bombard, summon, do a few different tricks with. This will slow the enemy down and weaken their resistance to fire. Really great ability for what we're trying to do here. Cool. Alright, let's focus down this manticore. Gordaz can also summon some more goblins, even better for some more line holding. Let's get in there and hold this Hydra in place. We don't want it to hit us. Alright, we can send our Wolf Riders into their archers to slow them down. And of course, the hardest thing about this is we need to slow the enemy down. So let's keep on using Ashen Storm to make their weakness to fire even worse. Now, as for Astragoth, his obvious specialty is going to be in Bull Centaurs, and you don't have to build your entire army around there, but you can absolutely have some fun with that. He's going to make them not just more efficient, but he gives them 15% ward save, and if you follow his personal tree along, you will see that he gives further upkeep reduction as well as lowers the armament cost, so we get some of those juicy buffs for much cheaper while he's improving their armor piercing abilities. But taking a look at it, man, geez, those stats are pretty beefy. I mean, the dual renders over 50 on their melee attack and defense, and the basic bull render versions are also dealing 100 armor piercing. So if we take a look at the Forge, what is the kind of thing you want to bring with them? Well, it's very hard to turn down regeneration. You can cycle charge in and get back out, but alternatively as well, you could get the barrier, and that does a bit of a similar job because you let the barrier wear down and then you retreat safely. So Devastating Flanker is a lot of fun. It deals double charge bonuses when attacking from the flanks, which is what you should be doing. So on the battlefield, we have Astragoth himself, and we're going to show an army which really revolves around these bull centaurs, but I'm going to do it at a point in the game which is around, say, tier 2, maybe just touching on tier 3, but you'll be able to use your technology to increase your cap of heroes. We're going to have Astragoth, a secondary sorcerer, as well as our Infernal Castellan, and they can sort of be a pseudo frontline in front of our real frontline, which will be our Dwarf Warriors, of course. We're going to have 3 of these as our front cornerstone. Now, just right behind them, we'll have our blunderbusses, able to shoot the enemy in between those gaps. So quite similar to what you saw before, and then behind them, again, we will have, shooting over the top, some goblin archers. Quite early on, we're going to start on this flank with a bull centaur Torok, behind him the shielded bull centaurs, and behind them a unit of the great weapon variant. This unit here, this bar here, is the cornerstone of this entire formation. So good, we're going to do the exact same thing on the opposite flank. Shielded variant leading the way using their shield to protect the great weapons version. Okay, so this is the main punch of the army on the flanks here. Now, because we've unlocked artillery building, you will have 2 artillery slots. Get, of course, the trusty magma cannon will deal with your early infantry threat. You'll also have 1 great Taurus capacity, so we're just going to have it back here in reserve or around a flank here to do a bit of harassment, and these are all units you can get very easily. The only ones that are slightly expensive are the bull centaurs, which if you're playing as Astragoth, I think is a very fun way to go. So holding Alt to move the whole formation up because we want them to stay together. Now, we don't want our bull centaurs to go too far away, but when they do, the bull centaurs, the most important thing about them is we want them to hook around, go around the enemy front line. We'll be firing our magma cannons, and it's often a good idea to aim for their range units, because that's the only thing that might be able to outrange you, because we depend on gunpowder. Alright, we're going to move our bull centaurs out and around on both flanks. First charge in with our hero centaur, and then charge in with our regular bull centaurs. Here we go, now we can get some flanks going on. The bull centaur Torok is one of the best heroes around. Is so powerful. Really great for holding the line. Don't forget to send your Battle Taurus into any loose archer units that you see, and just be careful of any friendly fire you might create with these magma cannons. And of course, your Dwarf Warriors make an excellent anvil for your bull centaur Toroks to smash into. Now on to my favourite, Drazhoath. In campaign, Drazhoath is obviously a master of heavy infantry as well as the Kadai based units. Now, as for the Kadai Fireborn, they're so fragile, and if yours dies, I honestly would have a hard time replacing it other than for lols. You can upgrade it, but honestly you want to focus on the heavy infantry with Drazhoath. So having a look at his tree, he has a few buffs which will help him across his campaign. I think they're quite nice, but here we have negative 15 upkeep to Infernal Guard and Ironsworn, as well as buffing their effectiveness versus infantry. So this helps them hold the line as well as punch back up close. So I really do like this. You can, again, buff more Kadai, but the better buff of this is because it does reduce the armaments, so you can boost them even more. Putting things that will increase their defensiveness will be much better. He is a beastie caster of the Flames of Asgoth, so magic is your friend. I confederated this guy, so this isn't exactly how I would have done it. But let's throw some armaments on them so we can have a look at what we might value. So melee infantry, we will be using Infernal Ironsworn. This is Frenzy, just an extra 10 melee attack. For virtually nothing, I really like it. I think it's just great value. As for missile infantry, we want that extra reload time. That's obviously excellent. Extra damage is something that is going to work with anything. And for the lols, let's get extra ammunition so we never run out. And welcome to the battlefield. Possibly my favorite formation for the Chaos Dwarfs, and it is a good old school heavy infantry formation with a short range firepower, which is why it reminds me of the Grey Knights in 40k. And of course, we're starting with a good old classic 2 hollow diamond, and the back 3 units will be the Infernal Fireglaive unit. Doesn't do anywhere near as much damage as the blunderbuss, but they are a very heavy sturdy infantry unit with good melee defense, 40 and 100 armor, but in front of them we have, with their very short range, the blunderbuss units, so they will be leading our diamonds, and you can swap more units out for Fireglaives. They really are that good, but this will give you a bit more flexibility, and I like to have armies which have flexibility for the hard battles rather than just making the ones that are easy to win. We are going to go with my four corners of having a good defensive infantry unit to pin the outer perimeter. We have a middle unit now at the very front to catch the enemy. We're going to have our Lord, which is Drazhoath, as well as our Sorcerer. Excellent, powerful flying casters, able to cast as well as pin the enemy in place, allowing more gunfire to go off. Guarding the flanks on each front, the Bull, Centaur, Torok. And of course on the back lines we do need a couple of artillery pieces. I've chosen these two because you get a good number of hell cannons stock standard, and this army will only use up one hell cannon and one artillery piece. Just never forget that you get that Air of Effect reload buff on your Demon Smith sorcerers, so don't be afraid to keep them back here where they can give that buff and then send them forward. You've got a really tanky Lord here. Again, this is just a custom battle to show the formation. In reality, we will have way more buffs than we would right now. Now you may find the enemy isn't quite coming towards you. In this case, Control A, remove the artillery and hold Alt and move the formation forward, and you will find them very quickly able to get in range of the enemy, and they will start unloading that firepower. If you see the enemy getting a little bit too close, don't be afraid to focus down the enemy. Really great to use with your firepower. Pin the enemy in place and just focus down the enemies as they come close. You may need to give them a bit of guidance. Even though they're gunpowder units, they sometimes need a bit of help, but man, once they focus, they will absolutely annihilate whatever they're aiming at. It's a lot of fun, it's pretty damn easy to use on the whole, gets insanely good in campaign. This is nothing compared to what it can do. Now, Zhatan the Black has a number of useful tools. He's basically just a beatstick in melee, a decent general, and his ability is to primarily pin an enemy in place with a snare ability, holding them still so you can just nuke the living crap out of them. He has some rather nice abilities, and but they're nothing really that great, and he's nowhere near as good as the other two lords, in my opinion, although he's great for kickstarting his economy, able to get more casualties, he's able to give himself regeneration and make all of his army both tougher, replenish better, and get better melee defense. So he's got a few things that make him interesting, but for the most part he's not quite the heavy hitter. The other two are because he has no magic, but this does mean you can focus on his general skills. Any direction you want to move yourself in with the Chaos Dwarfs is the direction that is right for you. So now let's have a look at some armaments, and this is possibly the most important one. If you want to run Gordaz destroyers, this is the way to do it. Now remember, you can boost this overall upkeep level by investing first in the Gordaz warriors. Okay, so these Fireborn warriors, you can get maybe half of those, half of these, so that way you can get this, get yourself the 35% 360. Doesn't matter what direction these arrows hit you, you will reduce your damage by a third. I'm a big fan of barriers as well as some even bigger missile resistance, so let's get all that good stuff. Now with that late in the campaign, we've also unlocked the technology which allows us to take 5 of these abilities, so let's just do that. If you want the Fireborn, getting the Unbreakable ability will make them stick around a lot better for obvious reasons, so this is kind of the fix to them, but you're paying this extra upkeep, so again it makes a tier 3 unit kind of useful later on. I think it's not worth it, but if you love this unit, this will make it operate. Extra powder will make those Deathquake mortars do even more, and reducing the damage when ramming with the Skullcrackers will make life even better for you. So the Blazing Body is something that I think is always worth getting. Over time it'll make you tougher and reflect damage back at them. Lowering enemy armor by 15% isn't as useful, nor is 15% ammunition, when you can just simply replenish your ammunition. For our very last battle today, we're going to do something a bit fun, and it's going to be as close to a Doom stack as you'll ever see me do, because honestly you can run these guys whichever way you like, but I'll be making just a thrown together pizza army of pretty much their 3 most cornerstone endgame units, which you cannot use at all or go completely hard in. But everyone's favourite, the Deathquake Mortar, has the campaign variant where it is dragged by a tank, and I thought if you want to have this kind of fun, I'll show you a way of using it, because there's a bit of mixed reception on some of these units. We've got, I think, 3 Doom stacks coming at us here. We have our tanks of death with the dreaded Deathquake Mortar with a variety of different frontline weapons, but we still want to play defensively here. So first of all, let's move these guys into a pseudo checkerboard, select all of them, or at least every second, and then use Alt to separate them out. Now the idea is we don't want them all to get taken out at once, so to guard them on the flanks on each corner, we're going to use our mighty Gordaz destroyers, and they will hopefully face up against anything that's really going to threaten them. But these guys can ram through, but more importantly, we need to make sure they turn a fire at will off, because they will start firing at any flying units, and I know that they've got at least one. So we'll use our heroes again to guard the front, and funnily enough, we'll use defensively a Bale Taurus. Now we've got a lot of buffs coming in from the Forge, and just remember with the Bale Taurus, they can be given regen when in combat, something that is very useful. So let's start this battle off and see if we can hopefully take out their flyers, and then when the infantry on the approach, we'll bomb them to Kingdom Come. Now in a situation like this, when you're being chased by a dragon like this that you want to come to the ground, you can try to land with your unit, so they will come down and face you, which is what we want here. So there we go, he's coming to the ground, and now our big hulking units, which we think are a match for him, can take the fight to him. Here we are. Alright, now these guys are ready to start shooting. There's no flyers to waste ammo on, so we can start shooting with our mighty Dreadquake mortars. With the Dreadquake mortars, make sure you give a different target for each of these, because they'll, as you see, just rightly nuke the hell out of whatever that first target was. So we're targeting their single entities, because that's the only thing I'm remotely worried about here. Oh, okay, so we're getting hit by these shades. Let's take care of them. And you really can just take your time and paint the fireworks. Oh, ouch, that hurts. And if you ever do get stuck, use your more power and you will get the extra mass you need. It's not just go around, but through anyone who might mess with you. And there's really not too much more to teach with this battle, so I'm just going to sign out now. Thank you so much for watching. Please consider liking, subbing, it helps out. There is a ton of resources on the channel, which I do hope you enjoy. This is Elven Plot Armour, and I'll see you next time.